feeling part of a family. Madam Chief Justice, when you bring us all together here and don't ask us for money and give us lunch, we start off very well. We start off very well. And some of the young lawyers who are going to ask her hard questions are going to find it difficult. They are going to, temper down, and because they have to appreciate lunch first. Anyhow, first of all, I stand here today on behalf of the chairman of the Senior Counsel Bar, Dr. Fredo Giambo, who sends his apologies for being unable to join all of you today due to prior pressing personal commitments. But in his stead, I am accompanied. We have come as a delegation, as the Senior Counsel Bar, and we have come with the real heavyweights. I start with Praveen Bowry, and I'd ask you to stand, please. If there is an advocate who has seen it all, it's Praveen Bowry. Every time you tell him he has excelled in litigation, civil, and all the rest of it, he always reminds you where he started, where he still is, which is practicing before the magistrate's court. So when the time comes and when you all need some guidance in that respect, Praveen Bowry is always available. He doesn't even like to be called senior counsel. The next person I would like to introduce is John Chigiti, now Justice. John Chigiti is a brother of ours who is an accomplished human rights practitioner, very deservedly appointed to the High Court, and at the appropriate stage he will take your questions on anything to do with and human rights. I'll go in no particular order to Jackie Jan Mohammed. Jackie Jan Mohammed, very young lady. Don't be deceived by the hair, but she also says it's all in the heart. She's always smiling, always has time for anyone and everyone. The idea of mentoring, the idea of being able to come here and listen is something she couldn't miss. She's corporate human rights practitioner, but I always tell him in 1975 I had a bigger afro than him. But he's happy to be here with us. He couldn't miss for anything. And the last, you all know, John Morris Ohaga, Senior Counsel. Always accomplished corporate commercial lawyer, arbitrator, and always has time for the society. When we were all having a problem as a society, when everybody was asking what are the Senior Counsel Bar doing, John Morris Ohaga was the one person who gave a lot of time to try and resolve some of the problems facing the law society. So that is the team. For those of you who are less than 20 years old, you will remember that the Senior Counsel Bar, being a creature of statute, was established or operationalized exactly 20 years ago under the then President Mwai Kibaki. And the first group of senior counsel, about 19 or so, were appointed at the time. Most of them are still with us. And they are men and women who served the country up until that point with great distinction. They're still with us. One of them is our chairman. The other is Dr. Willie Mutunga. There's Paul Muite. There's quite a few I can name. They're still with us. You all are aware that the criteria to become or to have the conferment of senior counsel is to have served the country, both private sector or public sector, with distinction. Offer yourself to be able to help. And I can say that this group, the Senior Counsel Bar, has a responsibility towards the legal profession in general, but in particular towards mentoring those that are coming up. Those of you who are coming up now in terms of age, could very well be the grandchildren of some of the seniors who we still have with us. So if we have been missing in action, and I dare say to some extent we have, on the issue of mentorship, it is the apology that the chairman is offering, that given the relationship now obtaining with the Law Society leadership, with the Office of the Chief Justice, we are a resource that are available and very, very available to help in the task of mentoring the young advocates. I have, and on this I've been looking up on the chat. Some of us are on Twitter, or at least we go through it. We're a bit silent in that regard. But I came across some statement made by one of you or somebody in the profession who said, we don't need mentorship, we need jobs. And while I partly agree with that statement, I disagree with the other part. Yes, young lawyers need jobs, but they also need mentorship. And what is mentorship? As far as I'm concerned, is we're a profession. Used to be generally accepted to be an honorable profession. We struggle to hang on to that title these days because many of us behave less than honorably. But the whole idea is that our job as a profession, over time, over centuries, is that we pass on the best to the coming generations. And I believe that if we are good at passing it on, we are good at mentoring, the profession remains honorable. And I heard Madam VP saying it's about networks, passing on skills, passing on ethics, passing on the way we conduct ourselves, in itself attracts briefs, attracts work. You mustn't forget something that is very simple. The person who has a brief, the person who needs legal services, is a person who has a choice. How many did you say, Faith? 22,000. So who are they going to choose from out of the 22,000? They will look for the person or the advocate with the best reputation, the person who handles themselves well, the person who conducts, is guarded in their speech, perhaps the one who is less vocal on Twitter, because there is this idea of confidentiality. So a client should not fear what their advocate is going to say next, because they might just share the confidential stuff with the whole world. And I have seen, and I'm not ashamed of saying, I consider it bad practice for advocates to engage in criticizing each other or even offering opinions on their own cases on Twitter as though that is their forum. I perhaps will identify with the Chief Justice in one regard when she did put out some guidance once on ongoing litigation, and she got quite a bashing. I think it is hard to be a judge. It is, trust me, I know, I live with a judge. And if you have to be writing or considering a case or writing a judgment and getting rained on by all the, are they called KOTs? Yes. Some are so clever, these advocates, they even tell you it is 4-3 or it is where I have lost and I know I have lost. It is hard enough, and that is something that in due course we will all realize doesn't help us and doesn't help the administration of justice. So on mentorship, when we were growing up, I told the table I was sitting on a few examples of how mentorship was all through pupillage. And if you had a good master, like some of us did with Ohaga, we went to the same law firm, which we shall not name, it was likely that you would turn out in a certain way. And if you had a bad master or a master who didn't have time for you, likewise, you would have to go out there and muddle your way through the profession. Sometimes you wouldn't do very well and you'd wonder what it was. But it's all about mentorship. So with time, with the huge numbers that are churned out of our schools, universities and the School of Law, perhaps it has become a little more difficult to mentor the large numbers through pupillage. So perhaps it is time that we looked at other ways of providing this mentorship. And it could be, I'm suggesting, I'm open to any ideas, and so are we as the Senior Counsel Bar. Mentorship talks by seniors and more mature advocates that are confined to the younger cadre of advocates, rather than just throwing it into the CPD. So let's look at the positive side. With youth, you younger people, technology has moved on. You're faster than some of us in keeping up with technology, be it research, be it operating the virtual systems. Those are the advantages you have, but you still have to bring them into play in a manner that everyone responds in the manner that you expect. We as Senior Counsel, and I've just named 4 who have accompanied me, we are all specialists in something or other. I'm a litigator. I've had a wealth of experience in criminal practice. We are available, and so are the other seniors, to provide those forums where we can engage, and you can pick from us whatever it is you think will serve you the best. In court, don't forget, nothing has changed. You still have a human being listening to you, listening to the case you make, appreciating your courtesy, appreciating your eloquence, and everything that goes towards making you a great advocate. So it's still very traditional. You will learn a lot from the older advocates. So I conclude by saying, Madam Chief Justice, President of the Law Society, and my colleagues, we're available. This is supposed to be an interactive session. We're going to listen. If any of you think there is a specific slot for us where we can provide guidance, leadership, mentorship, we are happy. So with that, I thank you very much for the patient hearing. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Senior Counsel Philip Murgo. So the Senior Bar is available. They're ready to listen. They're ready to work with you, and they're open to where you think they can plug in. So the ball is also on your court. When we have the plenary session, you can share your ideas, and we can see how we can work together. Now it's my singular honor to invite the President of the Law Society, Mr. Eric Theuri, to also share a word with us. Welcome, President.
The Honorable Chief Justice and President of Supreme Court, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Senior Counsel, allow me with humility to adopt the protocols that had been laid out much earlier. It is a matter of great pleasure for me to join the Judiciary, the launch of the Chief Justice Young Advocates Mentorship Program. It is a privilege for me to participate in this function with a galaxy of leaders from the legal fraternity, the judiciary, and most importantly, the young lawyers in this room and those who are joining us virtually. An author by the name Shannon L. Adler said that there comes a time in your life when you can no longer put off choosing. You have to choose one path or the other. You can live safe and sound, protected by people just like you, or you can stand up and be a leader for what is right. Always remember this. People never remember the crowd. They remember the one person who had the courage to say and do what no other would do. When I was asked to speak about the future of young lawyers during this session, and it being a mentorship session, I found it fit to reflect on the past for the lessons that we can take to the future. Indeed, mentorship is about learning from the experience of others gained over the years for purposes of getting guidance. During the colonial days and the period following the declaration of the state of emergency in Kenya, prominent freedom fighters were aided by lawyers like Dennis Noel Pritt, of whom Dennis Pritt Road is named after, A.R. Kapila, and others, to fight against unjust charges leveled against them by our founding fathers. The eminent lawyers used their legal knowledge to highlight the plight of the unjust colonial rule and set this country on the path to attainment of its independence. Not so long ago, during the clamor for the repeal of Section 2A of the former Constitution that ushered multi-party democracy in Kenya, the clamor was largely championed by the Law Society, and many members, including the current Chief Justice, made significant sacrifices to realize that dream. They did it not for self, but for country. As John F. Kennedy famously said, they asked not what the country can do for them, but what they can do for the country. Now, I recognize that in the current climate of harsh economic times, the competition for jobs, poor pay and working conditions, as well as the fierce urgency to make a living, it is easy to forget that an advocate is an integral part for the administration of justice. From the ancient times, the legal obligation of an advocate to conduct the case of a poor litigant without regard, when so required by the court, has been recognized not only in our country, but also in other countries. So therefore, to ensure justice to poor and marginalized sections of the society, an advocate is required to provide them with legal assistance, even when they are not in a position either to adequately pay him for his services or pay him at all. The legal profession has to ensure that the rule of law is maintained and preserved. Now, I recognize that this is not easy, especially when you're trying to balance it with the need to earn a living. But that said, democracy is our heart and soul. We have resolved as a profession to secure all citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty and equality. These indeed are inalienable facets of our Constitution, and they cannot even be amended by Parliament. You all are aware of the basic doctrine structure decision. So the legal profession has to take the lead by learning lessons from great freedom fighters, the constitution makers, parliamentaries, parliamentarians, and others belonging to the legal profession who have built the nation and its institutions brick by brick. All their efforts and sacrifices will go to waste if the legal profession does not take the lead, which I am sure it will, as it has done in the past. What is needed is the genuine effort, which never go to waste. So I say that what is required of us is the need for wholehearted devotion and commitment. As Steve Jobs once said, the only way to do a great job is to love what you do. I know it can be difficult to love what you do when the conditions of work are less than ideal, when the struggle to earn a decent living brings despair and a sense of hopelessness. Yet, our society expects the bar to render professional services in the nature of legal aid, advice, and advocacy, and in a free and fearless manner, so as to bring about peace, prosperity, and development for one and all. The judiciary can discharge its obligations in the administration of justice only with the total commitment and participation of its main component, which is the bar. It will be safe to conclude that the efficiency of the judicial administration largely depends on the competence of the bar. Now, for those of us who are old enough, you would remember Chief Justice Madden, and is quoted as saying that as the young bar, you have the distinct